Meeting on the land of the Bidjigal and Gadjigal people who occupied the Sydney coast, being the traditional owners. On behalf of Randwick Local Planning Panel, I acknowledge and pay my respects to the elders past and present. Good afternoon and welcome to the Randwick Local Planning Panel. I'm the chair of the panel and my name is Annalise Tour. With me are panel members Julie Savitt-Ward and Jason Perica, sorry, I've got a total blank, as expert members, and the community representative is Kerry Hamer. Prior to the commencement of this meeting, all the panel members were required to sign a declaration of interest in relation to each matter on the agenda. I can confirm that all declarations of interest have been received and that no conflicts were identified. The signed declarations of interest will be available to view through Council's website by tomorrow afternoon. Today we have a number of speakers registered to address the panel, including councillors. Registered speakers for each item will be heard in the following order: councillors, objector and applicant. Each speaker will be given 3 minutes to address the panel. If considered appropriate, an extension of 1 minute may be granted by the chair upon request. However, no further extensions will be granted. The panel has been provided with copies of all submissions received in response to the public exhibition of the application. Therefore, there is no need for speakers to repeat all the points made in those submissions. Speakers should focus on the key issues that they wish us to understand and consider, including any suggestions about how their concerns could be resolved. The applicant may wish to comment on issues raised in the Council's report, provide a response to proposed conditions and/or address any issues raised by an objector or councillor. After the speakers have addressed the panel, panel members may ask the speakers questions to clarify any matters, and only registered speakers will be allowed to speak and respond to questions from the stand. Any person using defamatory or offensive language may be asked to leave the meeting, or the meeting may be adjourned. And an audio recording is being made of this meeting, and we ask that speakers use the microphone on the stand over there when addressing the panel to ensure that their comments are recorded. The audio recording will be available through Council's website by tomorrow afternoon. After all registered speakers have been heard, the panel will move to another room to deliberate and vote on each matter. So the first application with registered speakers is item D1, which is 161 to 165 Bunurong Road, Kingsford. And we have an objector, Mr. Lawrence Savastrin, if you wish to come forward.
Thank you. Just we're not totally objecting to the development. We're just objecting for the over sort of building wise. We'll just go through this. How do I go through the next page? This arrow? Yeah. Okay. Is that page 1?
Yeah, this one.
Yep. So the laneway that the new development is using for their garage and stuff, that's actually my laneway to get into my garage. So I drive down this laneway. There's 4 other houses with 4 other families with young kids and also some old people. So we're having, I think this building comes out to here in the new development. So we're worried about the traffic flow and the danger of driving up here. We have enough problems seeing the people come around from Bunurong Road now. These trees and these cars are really dangerously parked there. We can't see people coming through. So we'll just go through the next slide. So we can see here that the lift comes out. I think there's some stairs and a big wall, which comes out here. So these railings, the wall's going to be higher than these railings. So we're worried about visual. This is an actual photo from my car. So we turn right into here. We can see these cars are blocking access from that way. It's very tight there. There's parking on this side too, and there's parking right where this car is. So we have this on a daily occurrence, trucks coming in and out. There's a tile place, there's a tap place, there's another place there that the guy wants to develop as well. So these guys have to back in and out, constantly stops the traffic flow. It's very dangerous. I've seen them clip cars here. I actually submitted for these no standing poles. They were actually here before. We put one back here, and on the other side we moved that too, because they were actually just driving around and hitting the cars. We have this on a daily occurrence too, so there's no standing here. People just park there and on the other side as well. So we can't even see and get in and out. So this is a view from driving up the laneway. We've got a car parked here. We can't get out there. Another car parked there. It's just a daily thing. This is just normal congestion. This is what happens. Garbos can't get through. Buses can't get through. Bunong Road's a mess here when you turn right into Botany Street, sorry. The traffic here is terrible. Another thing, just trucks in and out all the time. We can't see what's going on. It's just dangerous. This is what it should be like. There's a parking spot here. We think that should go. Give access people more access to get in and out properly. You can see how it's just a mess here. So this is the ramp going up. I think there's going to be a wall here, higher than the actual railing, so we won't be able to see in and out. And the lift goes here with this door is. I think there's a lift well that goes up there. And that's my last slide. So we're just worried about this. This all floods. I think the guys who are tenants there now, concreters, they blocked up, when they wash out the trucks, they blocked up the drainway. So there's a couple of drains here. This just totally floods. The other day it was just about 10, 15 centimetres underwater, the whole laneway. So it's just a bit chaotic. We're not objecting to the guys developing. It needs a tidy up. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just that this is a bit of a dangerous situation here for everyone in the area, I suppose. That's it, really.
Any questions? No. Thank you. The next speaker is Mr. Terry Burns on behalf of the applicant.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In response to the last speaker, everything was chaotic last Saturday and Sunday, so no excuse for that. But the sightlines issue has not been raised as being technically a problem. There might be an apprehension that it's going to be a problem, but the view lines are regular. The no standing zone provides for adequate sightline, and the traffic generated by this development in particular is not particularly great. We always bring the dog to this sort of thing. The purpose of my speaking is that I was asked to speak, and as far as I'm aware, I asked to speak about laundries and...
Look, it's probably more, we had some questions out on site when we viewed the site that we thought it would be good that you came in so that you'd be here to answer. So rather than you speak, we can probably just ask you questions.
I'm here.
Okay. I think it was, I'll start. It was largely, we've gone back now to what we understand is the latest modification to the original 1996 consent. 1969,
yeah,
sorry,
right,
consent.
Yeah.
And we're trying to clarify, I know the works don't necessarily propose any changes to the existing rooms, but some things do indicate, such as it says existing caretaker on plan level 01. But when we go back to the mod, that area was actually still shown as a common room, and the caretaker was on the opposite side of the corridor. So I don't know, we just wanted to actually ask you some questions about what your understanding is of certain rooms. Mainly our concern is that we think that there should be some sort of internal communal open space, and also we understand that the laundries in the basement are being replaced, and we want to make sure that there are adequate laundry facilities in the building to replace those laundry facilities, because at the moment I think it's just shown that one of the rooms is indicated as the laundry, but it doesn't actually have a door to it from the corridor. So it would only be accessible from the existing studio, which is shown on level 02.
Yes, that plan would say that. I'm sorry for that oversight. It's not the intention. The fact is that what is there now is what you see and what you get in this application, because it was approved to have the common room eliminated, and the laundry layout and kitchen area is exactly as it stands and as approved. And there was some pains taken in terms of the depiction on the drawings, and certainly in the statement, to indicate that there were no internal changes to this building for the 3 accommodation floors. It was simply the top room and the top level for open space, and downstairs for parking, so that it's just not part of the application. There is, however...
So when you say was approved, what are you referring
Well, I
to?
think we gave a DA referral number, I think, in the, the statement as to when it was approved to be the way that it is. And there's no modification to inside beyond what was approved.
So you might know off the top of your head, but is the a Section 96 application number 216 of 69A?
No, you're right, I don't have it off the top of my head.
But you say it's in the Statement of Environmental Effects?
Yes, I think we've identified it as such.
Okay, so we'll have to ask the staff to just check that.
But that's been abroad as to what we were doing. May I just explain, perhaps put it into context might help to explain the position we're in now. This initially started as a larger application for modification to the rooms, etc. And it was subsequently decided to divide it to what it is now as a facility improvement for accessibility, etc., and make that one application in its own right. There will be an application coming. I think we've even said that in the statement. Certainly the officers are very well aware of it, and the pre-DA meeting that we had was on a separate application. But that separate application is not abroad yet, and when it is, that question of laundries and, frankly, bathrooms and accessible passageways will become more apparent, but it's not part of this. Basically, it's an attempt to regularise what was an approval to use the roof for open space, but nothing was shown to do it, and an existing situation where the ground floors were parking, and the only additional element is the lift and the medical centre in isolation of the interiors. And I might say they will have common room and will have different arrangements of laundries.
Yeah, I mean, I think what we will have to do is go back to what we understand is the latest approval, because we don't want to be inadvertently approving potentially
there's
a
nothing
change
there
to
at the moment that wasn't approved, if I may give you that assurance, but by all means check it.
And the other thing is we wouldn't want to be eliminating the laundry facilities unless we're satisfied that there will also be other laundry facilities that are accessible that are available for people to use. So
decidedly improvement, I think, when we get around to it, but at the moment is what you saw this morning is what was approved.
Yeah. The other thing was there was a question, I think, about the doctors, the medical centre, which I'll just hand over to.
I noticed on the medical centre there's 5 suites and a reception area, but the only toilet that is available for the medical suite use is across the car park and outside the other shops. And I wondered if you had considered including a toilet within that medical centre.
Well, I suppose it would be the starting point, and it was for us as well, but trying to get the cars in and out and the traffic passageway and so on, and the fact that there is a toilet over there which just needed to be enlarged in order to accommodate wheelchair access lent itself to that location, on the basis that not everybody needs to go to the toilet, but it's convenient, but it's not as convenient as if it was associated with it. But if you look at the perimeter of that space, there's nowhere to go, and otherwise there's no room within the 5 units. That was the best we could do, shall I say, but it seemed that it was adequate.
Perhaps a little bit more imagination with reconfiguring the space. That was just what I thought. As feedback, as a person who occasionally goes to a medical centre, I know that a toilet within the facility is desirable.
Yeah.
I have another question too.
Can I, if I might just expand on that same point, my fellow panel members saying that there is a provision for one toilet in the ground floor that services 4 existing shops plus a medical centre which has 5 suites in it.
Yep.
And that seems inadequate, particularly with a new medical centre proposed to go in with 5 suites in it. You would normally expect 1 bathroom within that facility because, of course, medical practitioners need specimens, etc., and so there are potentially 5 doctors operating at the same time, and yet only 1 bathroom, not just for the medical centre, for the entire facility, and we were under the impression that was insufficient.
Right. Well, I accept it. It could be conditioned that way at the expense of one of the 5 suites, that's all.
Okay, so you would be comfortable with that, to provide 1 bathroom facility within the medical centre itself?
Well, I'm saying it's possible to do that, but you would change the layout slightly, yes.
Of course, thank you.
Also, in light of what the neighbours on the lane were talking about, would you consider modifying the corner treatment of the cement wall and where it's got the numbering to have a slightly lower slope or something that might make that transit through the laneway and the corner, and perhaps even a convex mirror, something to assist people?
A convex mirror, a halt sign, and you might change the balustrade from being solid to open, which would assist that. We didn't think it was necessary, but if that is a genuinely serious concern, those 3 steps would certainly address that point.
Thank you, because I travel that way, so I know that it's a very congested corner, and at peak hours it's very, very busy, and perhaps also appropriate signage of not parking on the corner outside where your building will, you're going out to the boundary for the lift area. So something, not a niche that makes it easy for people to prop there.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and another point I noticed, the door from the lift, the doorways look quite narrow on the plans, and as you're encouraging, potentially people with a wheelchair to be able to access those upper floors, the width of the doorway looked too narrow, so that would need to be amended.
I don't know that it necessarily needs to be amended, but we'd look at the provision that it provides for wheelchair access. But it's a conventional, it may be a drafting element, but it's a pretty conventional size lift with conventional size doors, which lift doors are usually that size, wider than any passageway door for wheelchair access.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Any further questions? Yeah.
Just on that, it's probably worth checking, because my understanding, I might be wrong, is with the changes to the National Code, the stretch access might be something that needs to be looked at as well. I'm just not sure how that might work.
I think it has something to do with the height of the car as to how much you can tilt the stretcher.
Right, I thought it was about the manoeuvrability of the
Yep.
stretcher in there before, but anyway, something needs to be like PCA.
Yes.
I guess I had a couple of questions that sort of follow on from what Mr. B raised. So that wall that's next to that driveway. Thank you. Sorry about that. So I can see how the height's determined by the 1 in 14 ramp to get disabled access as
Yes.
low as you can go, so you can't really lower that.
That's
But that open space area that is sort of the retaining wall, if you like, the wall retains the open space next to it, which is next to that access way into the lift. Is that proposed to be at the same level, and could that be lowered perhaps by 600 so you could sit on the edge and still have the visual connection? Do you know what I mean? Have you got the plans in front of you?
I don't.
Right.
I don't know how
But
to
in
get,
the...
we can get up on the screen, we'd all be talking about the same thing.
Well, the ramp that goes into the lift...
Yes, yes.
Yeah. To the east of that, there's an open space area to which that side wall retains. Is that at the same level? And if it is, does it need to be? Can it be lowered a little bit to still provide amenity and sitting on the edge?
That passageway.
You know what I mean?
Potentially, yes.
I mean, you wouldn't want a balustrade there, you want it usable, but if you dropped at 600, you'd be able to sit on the edge of the path if you wanted to, still use the open space and drop the wall by 600 and not need another balustrade.
Well, if it was conditioned that way.
Yeah, okay. And then I guess just expressing the comments that were made previously and repeating them back but a slightly different way, just thinking about the principles of the communal open space and the laundries. Just in my mind, the proposal is to remove the laundries in the basement and convert that to a garbage area. So it's
I didn't know there were any laundries in the basement.
yeah, there are, and there were. We're out there today. That's why it's a live issue. Yeah, so there's three washers, 3 dryers.
Oh, the level of the street level you're calling the basement, yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yes, that's right. Yep.
So the proposed garbage area where there's a laundry at the moment. So it's a legitimate thing to make. I mean, the rooms are small. The majority of them are 12 to 13 square metres. So the principle in my mind is converting a laundry into a garbage room. So we want to make sure there's laundry facilities to compensate for loss.
Sure.
There's quite a lot of rooms and they're fairly small. And similarly, the building's got really good access to private open space on level 1, level 3 and on the roof. But because the rooms are small, you want to ensure there's no diminution of communal open space,
Absolutely.
including internal
Yep.
space, because the rooms are small. So that's what led to us looking back at the approval. As mentioned on site, there was a previous approval 7 or 8 years ago. We dug that out, and it seems like, and it seems quite clear, that the level 1 manager's room and office that we saw on site today was last approved as a communal room, and that's a room that's directly opposite the open space. So in my mind, the practical solution would be convert back, whether it is or it isn't, but in principle ensure that the communal open spaces for a building that's fairly tight aren't diminished, and that there's appropriate provision for the lost laundry space in the, whatever you call the parking level.
Yeah.
And it seems to me the practical solution for laundry is you've got spaces that one of which is shown as a laundry on level 2, that perhaps the best solution is that the spaces next to what is shown as the manager's rooms as an ensuite on levels 1 and 3 could be laundries, because they're the levels that then link directly to the level 3 open space to Bunnerong Road and the level 1 communal space and side open space. That's what I see as the solution.
I'm glad you do, because you haven't had access to what the initial planning was, but that was it, including going out over the terrace of the ground floor to include open space at a lower level and not just rely on the roof level, but the studio gets turned into a common area.
Yeah, well, as you say, there might be a separate DA, but just
Yeah.
for this, it seems a
Besides,
reasonable
that's
proposition.
exactly the line being taken.
Reasonable proposition. Don't lose laundry space for a tight
No.
building, and don't lose communal open space. You'd agree with that's a reasonable proposition.
I once had it put to me that when making a proposition for something not dissimilar, that every unit had its own laundry, and that was ruled out on the
Yeah.
basis that people get together at the laundry. That's where they meet, where they worry about their clothes, etc.
Yeah.
And that's a very essential function
Yeah,
to
indeed.
the communal side of things. So that was taken on board when thinking about how it will redress what I think are shortcomings at the existing premises, but which we didn't intend to change this application.
So that's a long yes. And can I just ask if there's any comments from council staff about conditions? Are all conditions accurate? And
Yeah, to panel members, yeah, there is a typo at condition 2 that needs to be rectified. The the condition relating to management policy in relation to the restricting the maximum number of people permitted to occupy the community open space. You know, it's meant to be on the upper level, not on the ground floor.
The roof, not the ground.
Yeah.
That's it, thanks.
Any further questions?
I do have another question. Just a minor issue. The rooftop terrace has a lot of planting in it, which is an excellent initiative. I didn't see any reference to irrigation. Irrigation will obviously be important because of the exposure of the rooftop and the need to maintain the plants. So I'm assuming you would be okay with a condition. I know the proposed condition is regarding a new landscape plan, just to finalise some details. If we were to add something there that said to indicate the details for irrigation and how to maintain the plants.
No problem at all. I mean, this is an application to indicate the area and the changes, but know the details as to what's being planted and all the services and so on. But the concept is that it would certainly be one that takes into account the exposure of that area in terms of wind and sun, and the idea of getting some shading through the planting as well, and things like irrigation is just fundamental to the success of it all.
So we'll defer our consideration on that matter. The next item is 177 Darley Road, Randwick, and we have no objectors wishing to speak, registers to speak, is that correct? And we just have the applicant, Ms. Joanna Lukasvich. Thank you.
The revised plans, matters of Tony and second notice. So that's basically revised plans. So if you want to second one to the council, so William's already got it, so he knows. Just keep them to share. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, members of panel. My name is Joanna Lukasiewicz. I'm the architect for this application. Without dwelling on the details, already carefully enough assessed and recommended for approval, I would just like to request the panel reconsider some of the proposed conditions of approval. So, starting with condition number 4, the current owners of the property purchased it after works approved by DA 346-2010 were completed and occupation certificate issued. However, the approved pool was not built. This raised concern that should the pool be built in the future, the proposal would not comply with deep soil landscaped area. To eliminate this concern, application to delete the pool was approved on the 11th February. So that you can see snippet of the site plan where we've just cut out the pool altogether. Yeah. So there's no pool. It's all soft landscape area and the proposal complies. Moving on to condition 3. This is a snippet from the plans that you've got in front of you now. The report to the panel raises concerns about the bulk of the proposed roof over the alfresco dining area. This is considered and addressed in the amended plans revision A. The roof is now reduced in extent and height and redesigned to read as an extension of the garage roof. We've also reduced the pitch of the proposed garage roof to further reduce the height. We trust the panel will appreciate just how important an outdoor living space is for a small home and how unusable a north-facing outdoor space would be without protection from the elements. So we've gone to the effort of redesigning it for that purpose. And lastly, condition 2A. I'll just bring up that slide. Condition 2A raises concern regarding privacy from first floor east-facing windows. This, we've also considered this, and an alternative solution to achieve privacy is proposed, as shown on the amended plans revision A and this sketch. The solution is to provide pot plant boxes screened up to 1.6 meters above the floor level, instead of resorting to obscure glazing or reducing window sizes, which are already quite small as proposed. The proposed solution will provide additional articulation to the facades and result in a more visually pleasing environment, both for the subject and the adjoining properties. So a win-win situation, and hopefully condition 2A with that on the revised plans can be considered unnecessary.
So, sorry, which plan is that shown on?
On the elevation, east elevation.
Oh, it might be front side.
So the essence of the condition is to delete the lower halves of those windows. You think a better solution is to put in a planter box or trellis and keep the windows behind?
Yeah, I think so. And also, as opposed to obscure glazing, which has a rather unresidential feel about it, this gives everybody a better aspect, articulation, and from inside the occupants can be looking at planting. There's still no overlooking element is removed by the 1.6 meter height screening. So I just think it's a more sensitive solution when we're dealing with very tight spaces. The more you close the windows, the less sense of spaciousness you have. So I'm hoping that can be considered. And just in conclusion, I'd like to say that the challenge on this project was to accommodate a young family of 4 on a tiny block of land, limited in potential due to its heritage aspects. The response is a home of 178 square meters, which is a very modest ask, considering an average Australian house is about 243. So the design relies on the outdoor living space as an essential extension of the limited internal living spaces. And I trust the panel will appreciate this response as appropriate and hopefully approve the reduced and amended roof form. Thank you for listening. Any questions?
Any questions? Yeah. Yeah, Jess.
I've got 2 questions. One about and maybe I'd articulate the thinking behind the question beforehand, is I guess you have 1-storey buildings and 2-storey additions that are becoming more common in the area and varying size depending on the width of lots. They tend to crowd up the smaller 1-storey buildings, and so people tend to do 1-storey additions because of heritage reasons. They tend to be behind the main roof ridge and over the front 2/3 of a site, and then there's usually garages at the rear, and then there's a portion in between those that is generally people's private open space, which is where you're proposing the pergola.
Yeah.
It does seem fairly high to me, and so the thing that's driving your height requirement, is that to get views up to greenery? And if that is the case, why can't you do that through skylights and something that's more modest, so you don't get these large structures where generally there's smaller structures in the private open space zones of the terraces? Is question number 1, and have a think about that, and I'll just get my 2 questions out of the way. And the second question, and do them whatever order suits you, but on the first floor there is a blank wall for, it's not dimensioned in length, but looks, it's the play area where you've built to the side boundary. And while it is a semi, usually the logic of building to the boundary is where there's an existing adjoining blank wall. In this case, it appears from the side observation that where you're coming out right to the neighbour, to the side boundary, is where the neighbouring property to the east has its courtyard overlooking the roof. And I think the suggestion from them would be, or was in their submission, that should be set back the similar 900 mils as the remaining first floor addition. And just looking at the plan, I can't see that suggesting causing a huge issue with the layout of your first floor. So what do you say about those issues? That rather than putting a blank wall next to a blank wall, you've positioned it next to a courtyard space, albeit a side courtyard, and they do have their own rear yard, accepting that. And number 2, that where the pergola is made highest tends to be the open space zone, areas of open space, and reducing the height seems reasonable, and creating outlook through alternative means to get the sense of height rather than popping it all up.
Well, to address your first question, I think that we've taken on board the comments and we've reduced and redesigned the height of the proposed pergola quite significantly. It starts being an outdoor living space. I've allowed it in the revised design to start with a height of 2.4 meters, which is a standard minimum height for a living area, and then it only slopes up on the reduced slope, so it's not excessively high in the redesigned form, I would hope. And if further necessary, we're quite happy to take on board a further setback from the boundary with landscaping. As long as there is a roof over that area, it makes it usable. You can appreciate how unusable it would be being north facing and not protected from the elements. There's a large enough area of open space without a roof on it, which is soft landscape. It's got a lawn. That's where the children can run out. But if you want to sit down and have a meal, you need to have a roof. So that's the purpose why we're asking the panel to reconsider that condition and perhaps allow the revised and reduced design, which, yeah. And the second question was about the widening of the...
Setting that 900, why is that an unreasonable?
Just because it will... The spaces, we're dealing with such small spaces that it will be hard to make it functional. It's supposed to work as a spill-out zone from the bedrooms, which will have a study desk and where the children can sit and play under supervision, because it's not appropriate to have desks inside the bedrooms. And we're dealing with small spaces, so I've thought that the widening doesn't go all the way to the boundary. It's part of the articulation of the facade. What you will have if we do remove that, I believe, will be an inferior solution where we'll have a window facing directly the courtyard. So I thought widening it actually gives me an opportunity to put windows facing north and south, tiny slot windows, so privacy is immediately eliminated. And from the point of view, so you've still got articulation, it's not right to the boundary, it is set back, so it will be articulated. It's not a blank wall. It's a blank wall that it does not have a window, which is probably a very... I've considered that to be the most sensitive response to the site, because I've placed small windows facing away from the courtyard. So that was the purpose of the widening. Also meant that to get that floor space, we wouldn't have to go any further out. As you're aware, it's a heritage site, so I couldn't, as the objector had suggested, push the first floor into the roof space. It's the first no-no from a heritage point of view. You have to leave the heritage part of the property alone, have a clear break, and then start with your first floor addition. So I would suggest that the mass distribution on site is the best that I thought I could achieve.
So on that same issue, is it a possibility to move that desk and jutting out part further south?
It's not going to work with the bedrooms because you only have a little hallway there, and then you've got the width of the bedroom, which is already minimal at 3 meters because of the setbacks. So it will be a desk in a hallway rather than a desk in the landing area.
Yes,
where
it would be a desk in the hallway.
Where you come up the top of the stairs, and there's actually parents supervising small children, which is the case with that family, looking at what they're doing, what's on their screens. They're cooking in the kitchen. They just want to be able to go up and have and just glimpse without even the kids maybe knowing that they've just come up and stuck their head, and they can see the desk there straight away. In that, so the placement of that area is strategic for circulation and functioning of that floor plan.
Thank you.
And the family, yeah.
Any further questions? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
The next item is 25 Balfour Road, Kensington, and we have no objectors and the applicant, Graham Ormsby. If you wish to come forward.
Ready for me to start? Thank you. As you know, it's been recommended for approval, which is terrific. Thank you. And there seem to be just two relatively minor issues that just need some quick resolution. But the one, which is the simplest of all, is the closed chute that has been noted to avoid ceilings and so forth. It's an existing closed chute. It's not changing. The second thing, which I think, as I understand, you were on site today and you would have picked up, is the issue of the privacy screen on the boundary, or close to the boundary I should say, where we have a gap in the wall off the terrace to be able to see the greenery, but at the same time, for the amenity of both the neighbour and for our clients, we've got quite a high privacy screen, simply because the property next door is so much higher, and so to be able to have something at 1.6 metres would defeat the purpose of, and the amenity in fact, for both sides. So I can't see that we're actually achieving anything by doing that, so I'd really like that to be reconsidered. Other than that, I don't have anything else to say, but if you've got any questions for me.
Any questions? Yeah.
Just so I'm clear on that privacy screen, your position on that. So I think it's within 400 to 450 of the boundary, and the condition says pull it back in line with the setback of that, outdoor terrace area, and reduce the height to 1.6.
That's correct.
Are you saying you'd be happy to pull it back in line, but it should stay higher, or are you saying it should just stay as proposed where it is?
Well, I would prefer to see where it is, because by bringing it back in means that the ability to see into the greenery is lost, other than looking up into the neighbour. Whereas if it's left where it is, at least you see the greenery.
Right.
But if it's left where it is, the 1.6 metre does absolutely nothing for anyone.
Keep it as proposed, but if it is to be moved in, then not make it 1.6 and have it the height proposed. Right.
But where it currently is located is only 400 millimetres off the boundary, so your ability to actually plant anything between it and your neighbouring property is reduced, and so it's the greenery to either side that you're looking at.
It's the green to either side, correct. There's a pond that we had proposed, but it was proposed to bring that further into the deck, which would make less use of the deck, so we'd get rid of the pond, obviously. But the ability to see the greenery on either side.
The rest of the house is set back 1.2, so you could bring it back to the 900 and still have 300 millimetres slits.
But then, well, yes, but then you've got difficulty getting access through to the landscape area to maintain it.
Mm-hmm. So that at the moment, the metal screens, you go past those, do you? You get access.
Can you get down the side passage?
Like, how do you
Yes. So where the pond is, you'd be able to go past the pond on either side to access the side garden. There's about 800 millimetres clearance. But if we bring it further forward, or
So that big square isn't all water that you walk through. The pond is only that little rectangle at the end, is it? So you can walk through the pond. Yep.
no, the pond is the whole thing, but you could step across.
Oh, I see.
I don't see.
Over it.
There's stepping stones in it.
Oh, there could be.
Step over.
Yeah,
There could be.
You don't have to squeeze behind.
it's a
the back.
big pond.
I mean, we haven't sort of detailed it, but essentially you
Yeah.
make sure that you've got the access.
But at the there's two walls, it looks like, and then there's the pond. So you'd have to walk through the pond to get out
And access the side.
and access the side.
Either that, or you'd have perimeter stonework or something like that you'd step across. But the idea would be in the detail to provide the access.
Okay, and when it says metal screen above shown dashed, that's above. That's not on this level.
That's correct.
Above.
But isn't that pond like 5 or 6 steps up? The terrace area is 6 or 7 steps above the garden area. So the pond's going to be the same level as the terrace. So wouldn't all of that structure just block? So then you jump down the sides, do you?
Well, not quite. That particular part of the garden is actually higher.
Right, down the sides higher. I didn't notice it.
Yes, and then it sort of steps down toward the back garden.
Right, okay.
So in that area, it's much the same height. There's maybe a step down or something like that.
Right, okay. It's not as pronounced as the rear. It steps. Okay.
No.
All right. Any other questions?
None.
Thank you very much.
Okay, it's easy. Thank you.
The next item is 39 to 47 St Paul's Street, Randwick, the Ritz Theatre, and we have the applicant Patrick Le Bon.
Good afternoon, panel. I didn't really come prepared for a speech. All I just wanted to say was that obviously we reviewed the officer's report and support the recommendation for approval as per the modification we've proposed. And I'm just here to answer any questions that the panel might have regarding the application.
Any questions? Yes.
I'm curious to know what's your average number of patrons per session?
Look, it's varied. They've had a few sellouts, so, you know, in terms of selling all the seats that are available. But on average, it's varied, from what I've been told, around 30 to 50, that sort of number, depending on the night and the...
And the demographic, roughly?
I don't have that information, unfortunately, but it's been mostly locals. That's what the client said. Yeah.
I suppose students or young adults.
Yeah, well, but from what the client said, it's been a mix of patrons, so no predominant age group based on their observations to date. But yeah, it's been popular. That it's been going quite well. So yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
And that's the motivation behind the mod, is it? That
Yeah,
you think there will be a demand for people to use it on other nights of the week?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I think they've been surprised by the demand. I mean, it's been difficult to gauge because it's been a unique type of offer for this cinema. It's never been provided before, so they just want to maximise the use of the space. And you may not be aware there's a DA at the moment for an actual permanent addition at the rear there. So pending how that goes, you know, they want to maximise the time this year. And you know, if the DA that's in at the moment gets approved, then they'd like to start construction as soon as possible later this year, whenever that might be. So they just want to maximise the use of this space while they can. Yeah.
Is there a provision in that? I think we're told on site that at the end of the session that people are directed back through the cinema by an usher. Is there a provision stating that in the plan of management?
There is, yes,
Right.
there is.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right, thanks very much.
The next item is but when we've gone through everyone speaking, we're going to then close the public meeting. We go and deliberate, which could take a couple of hours, and then we come back and hand down our decisions. So,
But it's published usually.
but it's published the next day, so there's probably no point in waiting. Thanks. 33 Hastings Avenue, Chifley. Again, we have only the applicant speaking, Mr. Mark Swain.
Madam Chair, panel members, thanks for allowing us to speak today. I'm here on behalf of the owners of the property, Farad and Lorraine Bashar. We're very happy with the recommendation. The purpose of appearing before you is basically to, if you have anything that, or if you're of a mind to do anything other than adopt the recommendation as is stated, I'm happy to answer any questions. Otherwise, very happy.
Any questions? No? No
Thank you.
questions. Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
54B Brim Street, Coogee. We have Councillor Kathy Nielsen.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Councillor Kathy Nielsen, and I'm urging the panel to refuse this application for change of use from storage void area to swim school. I believe it's unbelievable that the application was built before securing the appropriate approval. My concerns centre around safety issues for the students attending the swim school. While I'm speaking, I should have actually been a bit better organised and asked if you were looking at the plan, because I think if you look at the plan for the lower ground floor, you'll very clearly see what I mean. Imagine if there was an emergency situation in the pool or pool area, how could the ambulance staff quickly reach the area using the one small lift or via a small staircase? The entrance door to the facility down here on the lower ground floor is a standard door, not suitable for people with disabilities, and I would also venture not suitable if there was ever any sort of emergency where you needed an ambulance and so on. Conditions of consent 33 and 34 do specify 6 students in the pool and only 1 class at any one time. However, how will the space adequately or safely accommodate the waiting class? My calculations are that the space around here is roughly 10 metres by 11.5. The space is inadequate to accommodate the students changing before or after a class. Look at the size of the 3 cubicles. They would barely accommodate a child, but how could a parent and a child fit in the space? Many children need assistance changing. What about small children needing a nappy put on after the swim? And look at the size of the cubicles, 2 metres long by 1.5 metres wide. You could barely get yourself in there. There's also the problem that there's only 1 toilet. It's also impractical, I believe. I've just recently come back from spending time with my grandsons, and I think anyone knows that you have no idea how long a child is going to spend in a toilet. It's also incredible that there's only 1 shower, and it's 1 open shower. Does a swim school adequately cater for students with a disability? I would say definitely not. Look at the steps to enter or exit the pool. They're not suitable. The floor space makes it very unsympathetic to catering for someone with a disability, let alone access via the lift, etc. And imagine, on top of all of this, being a nervous swimmer and you hear the noisy crash of gym equipment above you from the existing gym immediately overhead. I urge you to refuse this application.
Any questions? No, thank you. And Councillor Lindsay Shuri? Thank you.
Thank you for letting me speak. I'm also urging that you refuse this application. The pool and associated toilet change shower area were never included in the original DA. This was a storage area, to be a storage area, and somehow the lessees of that particular part of the building have put in the pool, and it's there already. The 1 toilet is there already, and I'm saying that's not a complying. Personally, it's not a complying development, and I think on this ground alone it should be refused. But then there's also the problems of the actual running, should you approve it, the running of the swim school. There's only 1 tiny lift in the building, as you probably know, because you went there today. And already there's a real problem with the number of people and mothers and parents going up and down. It's totally inadequate to deal with the number of, people coming. The timing, especially, the ending at 5:30 is peak time at the childcare centre. So parking will be a real problem, but also the use of the lift will be a real problem. And I also concur with my fellow councillor that 1 toilet, is just not enough. People don't come to a swim school and drop their tiny children off and leave. They all stay there. So you might only have 6 children in the pool, and then you'll have 6 parents waiting, and then coming in, there will be the 6 children getting out of the pool with their 6 parents, and the new 6 children coming in with their parents, and it's totally inadequate. That's my view. So I really urge you to, to seriously consider this application for what is an illegal use, in my opinion.
Any questions? No. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
We have an objector, Yuri Resnick.
Hi, I'm part of the ownership of the childcare centre called My Stepping Stones. This is a use DA of a recent illegally overbuilt lower ground floor level. This DA should be refused for illegality of the space, for fear of rewarding the applicant by getting a commercial benefit out of a space that should never have been built to this size or to this extent, and was supposed to be nothing but a common storeroom for the tenants in the building, which is not provided. This would set a precedent for other developers to overbuild illegally and then go ahead and use the space. And what message does that send to the community? However, should the panel be of a mind to approve it, I will distribute some suggested changes to conditions that may say